Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania and Senate candidate John Fetterman had some thoughts on the scaled-back stimulus checks in Biden's COVID relief package, saying, quote, "If you are a senator who is worried that the federal government might be doing too much to help working people in the middle of this crisis, then I've got news for you. You are out of touch."
Host of Smart Folks, Don Calloway, Democratic strategist, CEO of Pine Street Strategies, and White House reporter for Politico, Gabby Orr. They're back to weigh in. Don, let me start with you. Obviously, John Fetterman, he's running for office. He sees that political vulnerability he may be hit with around these checks, and he's urging people. Do you think this will be a problem on the national level? Because we've commented here, many of the people who have been taken out of this phase out are the exact suburban voters who delivered the state of Georgia to Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff. When they are not getting a check that they were promised, is that going to lead to political backlash in 2022?
No, I don't think so, because the suburban voter, we would want, I say me as one of them, the suburban upper middle class guy, right?
Sure.
We would want the check, but our lives are not dependent upon the check. So my vote is not going to be dependent upon the check. My vote is based upon women's rights. It's based upon your advocacy for voting rights and so many other issues that are out there that the Republican Party is just not going to stand up on. So I'm looking for the strongest advocate against Republicans if I'm voting in a Democratic primary. Now, I think that the political concern here for Mr. Fetterman is that he has to win a Democratic primary first. And he's going to have to run to the center and find a way to equivocate after he does that. But I think the proper position for the Democratic primary is that, yes, if you can't put up $1,400 per citizen, then yes, you are out of touch. Because let's be clear, $1,400 is a de minimis amount. It's not changing anybody's lives, but it is some show of support at a time when people desperately need it. So I think he struck the right political tone here. And I think that the middle class Democratic suburban voter will be okay, even if they don't get the check. But $1,400 is not enough, as I think Krista would agree. And I think that most voters in the Democratic primary are okay with this position.
Gabby, it will not surprise you that I very much enjoyed this whole statement, so I'm going to read a little bit more of it for you. He also said, in 2017, the Senate had no problem giving trillions of dollars in tax cuts to CEOs, but now they're concerned too many working people would be getting $1,400 checks. Wonder where that same fiscal sensibility was when it came to all the money we spent on the F-35s. Great point. Politically, Gabby, I think what's really interesting is here he is in this Democratic primary in a key swing state of Pennsylvania. And of course, let's all remember, he's already been elected statewide in Pennsylvania and is very popular there with the type of politics that he's espousing in this statement. I just think it's really interesting positioning that he feels out of the gates that he can kind of challenge the Democratic establishment positioning here, and it will probably be good for him in terms of his race and his positioning.
Well, I think he realizes the tremendous political miscalculation that Senate Democrats are making by, caving to moderate members who have requested this. If you look at the two people who have been pushing for this most in the Senate, it's Senator Shaheen and Senator Manchin from New Hampshire and West Virginia, states that don't have the type of cost of living for middle class families that places like Virginia, Maryland, DC, other Eastern Coast states do, where this phase out is going to eliminate people who previously received stimulus checks under the Trump administration. And, Representative Ocasio-Cortez pointed this out yesterday and said that she wasn't sure what was politically or economically wise about eliminating groups of people, millions of people who received stimulus checks under the Trump administration who will not get them now under the Biden administration. So, I do think it's smart politics in some parts of the country to point that out as a Democrat. And it's definitely something that the White House is going to have to answer for. And I presume some Republican members of the Senate will be bringing this up in their messaging over the next few weeks as this bill makes its way to the House.
Well, let me ask you that, Gabby, and follow up, which is that there's a split in the Republican Party. How do you expect that to play out? I mean, McConnell already I think he was on Fox yesterday saying 1,400 might discourage people from working. So you've got the leader basically saying that. But then I saw Hawley as well attacking, and I think several others are most likely to come out on this. How do you think that will play in terms of Republican messaging come 2022?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see, which of those voices, those two competing factions, are able to kind of effectively communicate on this. You do have the McConnells of the world, the Toomeys, the people who say that it's a good thing to phase this out starting at the income levels that Democrats have decided on. But then there are others, like you mentioned, Senator Hawley, Senator Rubio, who have said that this isn't something that should be included in the Senate version of this bill. that if anything, we should be giving money to people making, couples making over $200,000 a year who live in urban areas where that's technically could be put them in the middle class. I think this is going to be a messaging debate that kind of happens in the Republican Party over the next several years, and one that's going to be interesting to see kind of who wins out and how it resonates with the party's base.
Don, let's put the cart way before the horse here with regards to Mr. Fetterman. I mean, you're someone who, is great at evaluating political talent. You've worked with a lot of different politicians. We've been following Fetterman here for a while. We had him before he kind of burst onto the national scene and became a big figure during all the Stop the Steal insanity. What do you make of him as a potential national figure? I think he's got a pretty good shot in this Senate race and could be a really interesting figure and an important figure in the Senate ultimately if he were to make it there.
I love John Fetterman. I think he's interesting. If you just look at his candidate profile, he's got a multicultural family. I believe his wife is from the Latinx community. He's got this weird kind of unconventional facial hair. He's huge. He's a tattoo guy. He comes from this really blue-collar background, blue-collar hardscrabble town, which is unconventional for the political kind of jib, so to speak. I find him a fascinating guy, and I think that he has that rare ability to kind of resonate across all of the sections, the demonstrable sections of the broad tent that is the Democratic Party. I've seen him comfortable with brothers, like I said, his wife, and is raising a multicultural family. And I've seen him comfortable with the minors who you love so much, Crystal. So listen, I'm not saying I'm Team Fetterman, but I think he is striking an interesting character as this very, he's compelling. He's compelling, and he makes you take a second look in a way that a Connor Lamb or a Toomey, are kind of from that standard political mode. And if you can find a way, regardless of your politics, to stand out, that makes you an interesting candidate, and it certainly makes you a threat because it gets you name recognition, it gets eyes to what you say and what you do. So I think he can work a little bit more on the depths, his substantive topics, his chops, so to speak, on various important topics. But I think he is a fascinating political character, and he has a tremendous upside.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting.
Great to see you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Next up, an old colleague of mine, MSNBC anchor Eamon Moyaldeen. He's going to talk about Biden's treatment of MBS after Jamal Khashoggi's murder. That's when Rising continues.